want to assure Canadians, Lebanese Canadians, as well as the people of Lebanon, that Canada will continue to be there for the long term. As I mentioned, we've had a long-term, fruitful relationship with Lebanon and the Lebanese people over many decades. And even before this terrible tragedy, Canada has been a strong partner for Lebanon. Lebanon is an integral part of Canada's Middle East strategy, and we know that there is a very strong Lebanese community here in Canada that is committed to seeing the long-term reconstruction and, of course, benefit for the Lebanese people. We are increasingly worried about the financial situation in the country and recognize that the destruction of the port has exacerbated some of the challenges that Lebanon is already facing. We are incredibly concerned about the food security crisis that was already something that was on our radar and that we were working to support before this tragedy on Tuesday. And of course, the destruction of the port will make this situation even worse. I want to reassure everyone that we are in constant contact with partners on the ground, both humanitarian organizations that are delivering assistance, as well as our development partners that have been working in the country for a very long time. We are also in touch with the government of Lebanon to hear directly from them and what their needs are, and we will continue to have these important conversations as we continue to assess what our assistance will look like over the coming days and weeks. For Canadians who are in Lebanon, I want you to know that the embassy will begin receiving clients on Monday, August 10th. Thankfully, our embassy came out relatively unscathed, and as far as we know, our personnel are okay as well. Ottawa is providing consular support right now, and so for Canadians who are in need of consular assistance, please contact 1-613-996-8885 or email us at sos@international.gc.ca. But most importantly, I want Canadians who are in Lebanon and the Lebanese people to know that Canada stands with you in solidarity right now, and we are working with our international partners to coordinate the most effective response to this tragedy right now. Comme toutes les Canadiennes et Canadiens, nous sommes profondément attristés.
Like all Canadians, we are deeply saddened by the terrible tragedy that took place Tuesday in Beirut. We extend our sincerest condolences to those who have lost loved ones and to everyone who has been affected by this terrible event. It is important to acknowledge the work of first responders who have been responding to the needs of those directly affected on the ground, whether it is through their search and rescue efforts or their deployment of emergency medical aid. The Canadian government will continue to work quickly. Yesterday, we announced $5 million in immediate humanitarian aid. Thanks to this immediate aid, we ensured that $1.5 million will be distributed to our partners on the ground, including the Lebanese Red Cross through the Canadian Red Cross Society. This aid will help to provide emergency shelter, food, and water during the initial phases of crisis response. We will continue to provide aid, rapid financial aid to our partners. We must look past the immediate situation and look at the context in which it takes place in Lebanon. We, for example, in the context of the COVID-19 crisis, as the situation evolves, Canada will be prepared to support partners as needs become more clear. We will stay in contact with humanitarian organizations in Beirut because they are the best place to evaluate needs on the ground. And we will help them with our humanitarian assistance. The Canadian Embassy will begin receiving requests from Monday, August 10th. And in the meantime, Ottawa continues to provide consular support. Those in need of consular support can call 1613-996-8885 or send an email to sos@international.gc.ca. As I said, I want to assure Canadians and Lebanese Canadians that Canada will be there to respond to humanitarian and long-term needs. I am now ready to take questions.
Thank you, Minister. Operator, the line is yours. The rule is one question and one follow-up.
Thank you, merci. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, veuillez appuyer sur étoile 1 en ce moment pour poser une question. La première question est de Émilie Bergeron.
Question from Émilie Bergeron from QMI.
Émilie Bergeron, votre ligne est ouverte.
Émilie Bergeron, your line is open. Hello. In your announcement yesterday, you said on Twitter that you are continuing to evaluate whether more aid will be necessary, and you said you will be ready to provide more. What are the options you are looking into for additional assistance? Answer. Thank you for the question. As I said yesterday and today, all options are on the table. Canada has a list of options. It might be sending human assistance, sending material, sending more financial aid to the Lebanese Red Cross or other partners on the ground. We also know that the UN is there to evaluate needs on the ground. And I imagine that in the coming days and weeks, there will be an increased call for international aid. So Canada is looking into what all the options are that are available to us. And the most important thing is to ensure that the aid that we provide goes to what the needs are. We know that it's extremely important to have international coordination and to ensure that what we send is actually what is needed. Not even 48 hours have passed since the crisis occurred, and we are still looking into what the most pressing needs are. And that is why we sent funds directly to the Lebanese Red Cross.
Oui, merci.
Question, follow-up question. The Bloc Québécois' position to legalize donations given to the Red Cross was announced. What is your take on that position? And will the money sent by Ottawa, how will you ensure that that really helps people on the ground? Answer. Having a matching fund is a tool that the Government of Canada is looking at using. But as I said, we still need to look at what the needs on the ground are. And for that, we need to continue conversations with our partners who are present in Beirut to find out what their needs are and to ascertain how we can work together most effectively. And so that is always a possibility, but right now we are in the process of communicating with our partners to determine whether or not that tool is the most effective. But I am, of course, open to that possibility, and we are having conversations right now and analyzing that possibility. As I mentioned, only about 48 hours have passed, so we are acting, we are taking quick and significant action, rather, and we are having that conversation. And so I am open to receiving suggestions from other politicians and also communities here in Canada. But the most important thing is to ensure that the aid that we provide goes directly to those in need in Lebanon. And to answer your second question, that's one of the most important things for the Canadian government, to make sure that the aid we provide goes where it is needed. And so we are working with reliable partners, including non-government organizations with whom we have long-standing relationships, and other humanitarian organizations, and also multilateral organizations, including the UN, because we have a reliable relationship with them, and they will help us to ensure that the aid we provide goes to those in need.
Opérateur, s'il y a une autre question en ligne.
Is there another question on the line, operator?
Next question is from Lebanon, Radio Canada International. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Yes, hello, Minister. I have a question about you talked about the economic crisis in Lebanon, and Lebanon defaulted on its debt for the first time this year. Is there any thought being put to working together with G7 partners to offer Lebanon some kind of macro economic assistance in terms of debt relief?
Yeah, thank you for the really excellent question. We are very concerned about the economic situation in Lebanon. And of course, the defaulting on debt repayments was of great concern to us. And we've also seen the significant repercussions that this has had amongst the Lebanese people. Canada is always willing to have conversations, whether it's with the G7 or the G20 or the multilateral development banks, to see what we can do to assist Lebanon. However, we feel very strongly that there need to be significant political and economic reforms within the country to make sure that assistance would be most effective. We are having those conversations, and certainly Tuesday's events highlighted the urgency of making sure that Lebanon can get into a much better fiscal position. And those conversations are ongoing. But I would say that we are deeply concerned by the current economic status and the impacts that is having on the Lebanese people.
And as a follow-up, there are more than 10,000 Canadian citizens officially registered in Lebanon. Are you preparing any contingency plans in case these people would want to return to Canada now that a lot of them have lost their dwellings and businesses, and especially given the lack of commercial airline availability?
So at this point in time, we are still assessing the situation. We haven't received a huge number of requests for assistance, about 64 at this point in time, and those people are being assisted through our consular support services here in Ottawa. As I mentioned, fortunately, the Canadian Embassy doesn't appear to have been structurally impacted by the explosion on Tuesday, and all of our staff are okay. There was one individual who was injured, but they are recovering quite well. And so we will be resuming operations at the embassy next Monday. And of course, my colleague, Minister Champagne, is very active on this front and will continue to assess the situation as it develops further. However, at this time, we are still just receiving requests and trying to assess what the impact on Canadians has been on the ground.
Merci. Étant donné que le temps est limité, je propose si un journaliste dans la salle.
Thank you. Given that we have a limited time, I would now ask journalists in the room.
Question, please.
Question from Hélène Buzetti from Le Devoir. Minister, I would like to come back to something you mentioned. Is direct aid from the government a possibility, given that there is generalized corruption within or there are concerns of generalized corruption within the Lebanese government? Answer. As I said, Canada is working together with partners, including humanitarian organizations and multilateral organizations such as the UN. And in this specific case, Canada is only working with non-government organizations. We are in contact with the Lebanese government, but at this time, no direct aid is planned from Ottawa to the Lebanese government, and we will continue to work with our reliable partners on the ground. Question. And so you've heard about those corruption allegations. Could you please let me know if that's not the case? Now, can you tell me also about our DART team, the Disaster Assistance Response Team? Will that team be deployed, and if not, why? Answer. As I mentioned, all options are on the table at this time. But it is also important to understand that we are part of an international response. And so, in that context of international response, there are still countries of our partner countries who are better placed to respond than us. For example, yesterday, a European team that is part of UNDAC that is designed to respond to international disasters and disasters in Europe are on the ground. They are on the ground now. We are, of course, having conversations to ascertain whether Canadian aid via the Canadian Armed Forces is necessary. We are looking at those possibilities. But it is also important to know that we must have good international coordination to make sure that the best placed people are on the ground and not send people if there is no specific need for them. That is why we responded quickly with financial aid. Canada was one of the first countries to send funds to the Lebanese Red Cross. That was swift response to the crisis, and those funds will be used locally. That is what we wanted to do, and that is exactly what we did. But as I said, all options are on the table. And we will be ready to respond when we get the call.
Can you just go over again exactly where the Canadian aid is intended to go to? Is this going to the government of Lebanon to distribute, or will this be going to various NGOs operating in the area? And can you give us a timeline on when Canadian aid is expected on the ground, as other countries have already got people there helping out and have sent resources already?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, let me just say that Canada was one of the first countries to respond with financial assistance yesterday, which we understand is one of the things that humanitarian organizations need most in the immediate aftermath of a disaster. It's something that we've learned from previous crises and disasters that, it's important to ensure that local actors who are responding, like the Lebanese Red Cross, have the resources that they need to respond immediately. And we worked very quickly over the course of the first 24 hours to provide that support through the Canadian Red Cross to the Lebanese Red Cross, and so they should have access to that support already, if not in the very immediate future. And so that was the first $1.5 million that was provided for the Lebanese Red Cross and other actors on the ground. And then the remaining $3.5 million, we are kind of assessing the needs right now, and we'll make a determination over the coming days and weeks as to where that assistance is most needed. When it comes to international crises and disaster responses, it's important to note that we are part of an international community that is coordinating a response. And so while, yes, there are other countries that have human resources deployed on the ground. Canada has all options on the table, and we are ready and willing to assist as we're called upon. However, when it comes to the European first responders that are on the ground, they're part of the UNDAC team that is, at the ready to respond both in Europe and in the region. And so they have been deployed, and Canada remains in constant contact with our international partners to determine how best to respond. But as I said, we were one of the very first countries to announce financial support, which is precisely what actors like the Lebanese Red Cross and those that are on the ground responding right now need.
And the French president traveled to Beirut, I believe it was yesterday or early today he arrived. Granted, they have a different relationship, those two countries. He did say that in previous remarks about aid to Lebanon, that there would be strings attached with regard to having reforms at the institutional and governmental levels in that country, and highlighted that again today. Is Canada in any position, and are you going to make any demands of the Lebanese government to get their house in order?
Yeah, so as I said, Canada is extraordinarily preoccupied by the fiscal situation in Lebanon right now, and we have been having conversations, certainly with with G7 partners, but in the broader international community as well, that we are ready to provide assistance to Lebanon. However, we recognize that has to come with significant fiscal and political reforms to ensure that that assistance goes to benefiting the lives of the Lebanese people, and that is something that we have been very firm in, and so that's one of the reasons why we continue to provide our assistance through trusted humanitarian partners who are operating on the ground, but recognizing that this disaster in particular has exacerbated what was already a very precarious financial position for Lebanon.
Quelqu'un d'autre dans la salle?
Oui, bonjour, Lina Dib, la presse canadienne.
Question from Lina
Madame
Dib
Gould, à
from
propos de
the Canadian
du
Press.
gouvernement libanais, vous dites que vous êtes en conversation avec lui, vous dites que
Minister Gould, you say that you are in conversation with the Lebanese government and that you want to see changes in policy. But the Lebanese population wants these politicians to step down. What pressure can the Canadian government put on Lebanon, given that you are in conversations with the government at this time? Answer. Well, at the moment, the conversations we are having with the Lebanese government are on the subject of how to respond to the current crisis. And the answers we are receiving are to work with partners on the ground. However, those other conversations will continue and will be important to the international community as well. Canada has been clear for a long time that Lebanon, and especially the Lebanese people, are longstanding partners of Canada. We have an extremely strong and engaged Lebanese community in our country. So Lebanon is a country that is important to us. And we want to see Lebanon have more success and be in a less precarious fiscal situation. And so we will be having conversations with the Lebanese government and within the international community. Follow-up question. I would like to insist and ask another question. So for Canada, the Lebanese government remaining in place is a possibility? All of these politicians that the Lebanese people want to get rid of? And another question, you say that the embassy will be opening next Monday. Will Canada be experiencing a lot of immigration requests in the aftermath of this crisis? Answer. Thank you. Firstly, regarding our embassy in Lebanon, It is very fortunate that the embassy was not hit hard by Tuesday's disaster, and also that our staff are all in good health. They are, of course, evaluating impacts on the ground. I think it is still a little early to make predictions about what will happen in a week's time. However, we stand ready to assist Canadians who need help. And of course, consular services in Ottawa are already helping Canadians in Lebanon. But we will see what happens over the coming week. It will be important to help Canadians in Lebanon, and the Canadian government is there for them. Question. Excuse me, but I was asking about immigration requests, not consular aid. You said that the embassy will be ready to provide consular aid, but my question is whether Canada is expecting an influx of immigration requests from Lebanon. Answer. Well, what I said is that immigration and consular services are normal services, and they support embassies, and that will be open as it normally is, and it will open on Monday. And as I said, I believe it is a little early to be able to predict what will happen. But what I said was that we will be assuring normal services in our embassy as of Monday.
One more question on the line.
Thank you. Question is from Michelle Carbert of the Globe and Mail. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking our questions. Please excuse me if you've already answered this in French, but could you please reiterate in English and guarantee that no Canadian taxpayer dollars will be going to the Lebanese government over concerns about corruption that have been expressed by members of the community in Canada?
Yeah, so as I said, our humanitarian assistance goes through trusted NGO, humanitarian, and multilateral partners on the ground. Canada has worked in Lebanon for decades, and particularly over the last 5 years as part of our Middle East strategy. And so we have a number of partners, be they NGOs, humanitarian organizations, or the multilateral organizations such as UN agencies with whom we have longstanding trusted partnerships. And so our humanitarian assistance will continue to flow through these organizations. At this point in time, the only organization that has received Canadian assistance is the Lebanese Red Cross, and that was through a transfer via the Canadian Red Cross.
One follow-up, and we will have to conclude. Any other journalists on the line, operator?
Yes. La prochaine question est de Laurence Martin.
Question from Laurence Martin from Radio-Canada. Question. Are Lebanese Canadians going to be able to bring in their family members who are in crisis in Lebanon right now, despite the COVID situation? Answer. Thank you. For Canadians, it is already the case that close family members are allowed to visit them in Canada. I think that it will be better to ask the Minister of Foreign Affairs that question. Follow-up question. So what you're saying is that if I'm Canadian right now and I have family in Lebanon, am I going to be able to bring in my loved ones to Canada? answer. I would have to speak to my colleague, the Minister of Immigration. The only people in the COVID-19 context who can now come and visit Canadians, if they are not permanent residents or Canadians themselves, or if they do not fall under the current exemptions in place, are close immediate family members of Canadians or of permanent residents. Those are the current rules. Thank you. This concludes today's press conference.
That's the Minister of International Development, Karina Gould, announcing that the federal government will provide $5 million in humanitarian assistance for the people of Beirut, with the initial $1.5 million going immediately to the Lebanese Red Cross and other trusted humanitarian organizations. Now, let's bring in our chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton, who's been listening in as well. Rosie, thanks for joining us. It sounds like Canada is waiting to see what Lebanon needs most before pledging any more than the $5 million.
Yeah, I mean, this initial amount of money, particularly, as you pointed out, the $1.5 million going to the Lebanese Red Cross, the minister said that is really to save lives over the next 48 hours as the rescue mission continues. But it is also